Hey guys, it's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and continuing the theme of some wrestling content, today I'm going to be talking about potential Chris Van Vliet interviews I would want to see. For those of you that don't know, Chris Van Vliet is probably the best wrestling interviewer out there at the minute. He gets a lot of high profile guests, he asks in-depth questions, and more importantly, he lets people talk. So he's just awesome. And these are potential interviews I would like to see. Let's start with the first one, Dominik Mysterio. With everything that's gone on with Dominik over the past few months, with being involved in his dad's storyline with Seth Rollins, obviously training to be a wrestler over the last few years, his history in the business, how he felt with his dad, growing up with his dad in the business, his family life, how he got into being a wrestler. Did his dad open some doors for him? Did he just say to his dad, look, I want to do this, don't sort of help me, I want to see if I can do this on my own? Did WWE reach out to him to do the Seth Rollins storyline? How basically that storyline came together? What's some other things? Basically what he wants to accomplish as a wrestler and how he feels like he can do that. And does he want to wear a mask like his father, or is he not, or is that not something he's interested in? I feel like, again, this would be a very in-depth conversation and just one that I'd enjoy, really. The next one is Bray Wyatt / The Fiend in character. With Bray Wyatt's career being the way it is, I would love to see how The Fiend would do an interview in character, because he's basically like a horror film Joker-esque character. So I wonder how that would be as an interview for Chris, and what they would end up talking about, like the creation of The Fiend, how The Fiend came out in story. But also, I would love an out-of-character interview with Bray Wyatt on how he created The Fiend, his run with John Cena in 2014, how his WWE Championship run, how the Wyatt family came together and ultimately ended up fizzling out, how he wanted the Wyatt family to end, his thoughts on Brody Lee going to AEW, his thoughts on Eric Rowan's release, his many characters and how he hopes they can all be connected, his current feud with Braun Strowman, and also I would love to hear his take on the Goldberg situation in Saudi Arabia earlier in the year, where Goldberg basically said, I'm coming in and beating you. So I would love to hear his take on that. The next one is Brock Lesnar. This interview is obvious, since Brock doesn't do a lot. There's so much Chris could cover, from his 2002 to 2004 stint in WWE, his UFC career, his football career, how he ended up coming back to WWE, how he got such a light schedule, and the main thing I'd be very curious to know about is him doing suplexes each match and having a very slow and repetitive match his call, or is that something WWE tells him to do, as well as winning the title? Is that something he comes in and says, I'll only come in if I win the title, or is that WWE's call because he's such a big star? Again, I'd just love to see an out-of-character interview and just see how he would react. And because Brock is quite quiet, I feel like Chris would be very good at getting information out of him. So the next one is Tom Campbell. For those of you that don't know, Tom Campbell is a member of the Cultaholic YouTube channel, which covers wrestling. A few months ago, he had Chris Van Vliet on his show, Desert Island Graps, and obviously interviewed him. And I would love to hear more about Tom as a person, because I know he didn't start in wrestling or wrestling YouTube. He started in radio, so I'd like to hear how he got into that, what he studied to become a radio presenter, how he got into Cultaholic, how it's different working behind a microphone or camera, and then in front of a camera, how he feels Cultaholic has embraced him, how he feels the fan base has embraced him, if there's anything they could improve, what he would like to see Cultaholic do in the future, and mainly if he plans on going back into radio in the future, because I feel like he's a great guy that could accomplish anything he wants to. And also fishing, randomly. If you watch their Desert Island Graps, Chris owns a fishing company, and it seems like Tom Campbell likes fishing, so I would like to see how like a fishing trip between both of them would go, so that would be a cool interview, I think. Next one is Tommaso Ciampa. I would love to, obviously, for the longest time, Tommaso Ciampa didn't do interviews because he protected his character at all cost. But now he's a face, I think, or a good guy. He's not protecting his image so much, and he's not really insulting the fans. I'd love to hear about his character, how he came up with the no music character, and almost the slow walking character, how he put matches together, the neck injury that ultimately cost him and Gargano a match over WrestleMania weekend, how they put together the one final beat match after the pandemic. Just, I'd love to hear about his career, really. I think that would be an interesting interview. The next one is Volta, who is the NXT UK champion. I don't know much about Volta, so I would love to see or hear an interview with him to discuss his life, how he got into wrestling, his previous wrestling before WWE, how he ended up signing for NXT UK, how he felt the transition was when he came up to wrestle Kushida in the United States a few months ago, how why he doesn't want to be in the United States full time, how he feels like WWE compares to wrestling outside of WWE, etc. Just things like that, really. The next one is Adam Blompier. For those of you that don't know, again, Adam Blompier is a former member of the biggest wrestling YouTube channel called What Culture Wrestling. And basically, I would love to hear an interview of how he got started at What Culture, his life before that, because I know he did some comedy circuit and acting, why he decided to leave What Culture, his fallout with Cultaholic, and the scandal, I'll say, that basically he made him decide to leave YouTube for a while, why he decided to come back. He's now working for Wrestle Talk, how that came about, things that like that, and how he feels like wrestling has changed since he left, and whether he continued to watch, and whether he can still view wrestling as a fan, because that's one thing I'd be very curious to know about. Also, I'm trying to think of how the idea for Quizlemania came about, which is Wrestle Talk's big quiz about wrestling that they do bi-weekly, I think it is, with occasional guest stars, how he comes up with how they should have booked videos, just things like that, really. I just think this would be a good conversation. And my final one is the McMahon family. So I'll start with why I want him to interview Linda, because I know she's into politics now, and what it's like being married to Vince, and getting involved on the wrestling shows, whether that was her call, whether she wanted to do that, whether she didn't. Oh, and then with Shane and Stephanie, I'd like to hear what it was like growing up with Vince as a father, how they got into wrestling, whether Vince wanted them to, or whether he was very against the idea, whether with Shane, I'd love to hear about why he left, and with Steph, why she's never left and just stayed, and never really ventured out on her own. And then obviously the big one is Vince himself. I feel like that could be about a 4-part interview, because he could cover everything from working for his father to taking over the company and buying up all the territories and expanding it, to the steroid trial, to the eventual formation of WCW and the Attitude Era, how he felt about nearly being put out of business, what it was like being essentially the only game in town for a little while in the 2000s, and now how he feels about AEW and things like that. With AEW now cropping up, how he feels about them and whether they have a shot at taking him down, or what he really feels, really, and mainly what he plans to do if he decides to retire or unfortunately passes away. Like what he decides to do with the business. Does it go to Triple H, who is his son-in-law, or does it go to other members of his family, or does he have someone completely different in mind that he wants to take over the business? Basically, I just feel like that would be a very interesting chat with the entire McMahon family. Then Chris could maybe... I'd also like to see how it would be if it was not produced by WWE. If, like, they would answer more questions and say they would on a network special and gave less filtered answers, shall we say. Anyway, guys, these are just my thoughts. Leave some of your ideas in the comments, and I'm going to put this on Twitter, so please like and retweet it, so hopefully Chris can see this, and hopefully we get some of these ideas. Anyway, much love. It's been a pleasure.